All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling decentralized exchanges, DEX. Specifically, we're looking at Uniswap V3.
Uniswap V3,
And we've got this really interesting research paper from the Bank of International Settlements.
the BIS, yeah.
They're really digging deep into, how this whole thing works. And it begs the question, are DEXs really changing the game, making finance more democratic?
Democratizing.
Or is it just like a new group of, what's it called, sophisticated players coming in and kind of taking over?
Right. Like, is it really a level playing field?
And the paper's got some interesting findings, especially about profits, like how everyday investors, retail investors are doing compared to these big players.
The sophisticated ones.
Yeah, and get this, the differences get even bigger when the market goes crazy.
Volatility, yep. That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so I know our listeners are pretty familiar with DeFi and all that.
Yeah, they're a smart bunch.
But before we get too deep in the weeds, let's just, set the stage. Remind everyone what makes Uniswap V3 so special, why everyone's talking about it.
Well, the big thing with V3 is this idea of concentrated liquidity. See, in the older versions, liquidity providers kind of spread their assets all over the place, across the whole price range.
What, casting a wide net, hoping to catch whatever comes along.
Exactly. But V3, it's way more strategic. You can pick a specific price range where you think the action's going to be.
So you're focusing your resources, betting on where the price is going to go.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like setting up shop right in the busiest part of town. You could make more money, but you got to be on your toes, constantly adjusting to, the flow of traffic.
So right there, you can see how someone with more time, more tools, maybe even some fancy algorithms could really have an advantage.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this BIS research so cool. They looked at hundreds of thousands of liquidity positions, right, from the top 250 Uniswap V3 pools.
Wow. So we're talking like 96% of all the activity. That's a lot of data. How did they even tell who were these sophisticated players and who were just regular people, trying out DeFi?
Well, they looked at a bunch of things. First, how much money each person had ever put into a pool. Anyone in the top 5%, they flagged them as potentially sophisticated.
So the big spenders.
Right. But it wasn't just about how much money they had. They also looked at how many different liquidity positions they held, how many different pools they were active in.
So it's about being active, being involved, not just parking your money somewhere.
Exactly. And they even looked at how often they were trading. Plus, some wallet addresses are publicly linked to known investors, so they could identify some folks directly.
It's amazing how much of this is like out in the open on the blockchain.
Transparency.
Yeah. So what did they find? How much are these sophisticated players really controlling things?
Well, it's pretty striking. They found that these players, even though they only represent about 7% of the wallets they analyzed, they control something like 80% of all the value locked in those top pools. And they're taking home about 80% of the fees generated.
Whoa. So even though it's supposed to be decentralized, this small group is still calling most of the shots.
It seems that way.
So why is that? Are these sophisticated players just making better decisions, or is there something else going on?
Well, the research points to a few things. First off, these sophisticated players are just way more active. They're constantly monitoring their positions, making adjustments, reacting to even the smallest changes in the market. Like they're using algorithms, data analysis, maybe even some machine learning to optimize their strategies.
It's like they brought Wall Street to DeFi, but with code.
You could say that. And remember that concentrated liquidity thing we talked about? Well, it seems these sophisticated players are really good at it. They're picking the right price ranges where they can make the most fees. Well, a lot of retail investors might be spreading themselves too thin, missing out on the big gains.
So it's like they're playing chess, and everyone else is still learning checkers.
Something like that.
But it sounds like they're not just playing the game well. It sounds like they might be using some pretty aggressive tactics, too.
Yeah, there's this strategy called just-in-time liquidity. They basically watch the blockchain for big trades about to happen, and then they swoop in at the last second, providing liquidity just when it's needed most.
So they're like setting a trap, knowing that someone's going to have to pay a premium for that liquidity.
It's a risky move, but it can pay off big time if you get it right. And it raises some questions about, fairness and transparency in DeFi.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's really as level a playing field as everyone thought. But we've got more to unpack here. So in part 2, we'll dig deeper into the strategies these sophisticated players are using, and we'll see if there's any way for us regular folks to keep up.
Back again, diving deeper into decentralized exchanges,
Last time, things got a little intense.
Intense.
We were talking about how these so-called sophisticated players are like running the show on DEXs.
Yeah, they're using some pretty advanced tactics and, well, maybe not always playing fair.
Right. So the question is, can regular investors, can we keep up? Is there even a chance?
Well, I wouldn't say it's hopeless.
Okay, good.
The future of DEXs is still, it's a work in progress, and there are a few things that could shake things up.
Like what? Give us some hope here.
Well, one possibility is regulation. Right now, DeFi is kind of like the Wild West, you know? Not many rules.
DeFi. Decentralized finance or dangerously unregulated. I can see the headlines now.
Exactly. But, you know, as DEXs get bigger, more money flowing through, regulators are going to start paying attention.
Makes sense.
And with regulation, you could see more transparency, more protection for investors, maybe even some rules to make things fairer.
Right. But wouldn't that, like, go against the whole idea of DeFi? No central control.
Right. It's a tough balance. The trick is to protect people without, killing the innovation.
So regulators have their work cut out for them.
They do.
Okay, but what about technology itself? Can't new tech help level the playing field?
Definitely. One big area is gas fees. Those transaction costs can really hurt smaller investors.
Yeah, those could add up.
But there's a lot of work being done on blockchains that could slash those fees, make DeFi more accessible to everyone.
Lower fees would help everybody.
For sure. And it's not just about fees. There are new platforms popping up that are designed to be user-friendly, easier to understand, even if you're not a crypto whiz.
That's good to hear. Some of these platforms, it's like you need a computer science degree just to figure them out.
Yeah, but that's changing. There are some smart people working on making DeFi easier for everyone to use.
So maybe we'll see platforms that actually give retail investors the tools they need to compete?
I think so. And don't underestimate the power of, community and education.
Right. The more people understand DeFi, the better.
Exactly. There are tons of resources out there. Blogs, podcasts, online communities. It's a great time to learn about DeFi.
Okay, but let's get back to the BIS research for a minute. They looked at specific strategies, right? How sophisticated players are doing things differently.
Right.
So what do they find?
Well, one big difference is how they use that concentrated liquidity feature.
The one we talked about before, yeah.
You know, focusing your liquidity in a specific price range.
Right. Higher potential profits, but you got to be really active, keep adjusting things.
And that's where sophisticated players really shine. They're constantly tweaking their positions, rebalancing their assets, trying to, squeeze every bit of profit out of the market.
So they're playing like financial Tetris or something.
Yeah.
Constantly moving pieces around.
You could say that. Meanwhile, a lot of retail investors, they might set things up and then just kind of forget about it. And that can be risky, especially when the market's moving fast.
You miss out on opportunities or maybe even lose money.
Yeah.
It really shows how important it is to not just have the tools, but to know how to use them.
Absolutely.
But speaking of tools, we were talking about some of the more aggressive strategies these sophisticated players are using.
Right.
Like just-in-time liquidity.
Yeah, where they jump in right before a big trade happens.
It seems so complicated. How do they even do that?
Well, they're monitoring the blockchain, looking for patterns.
Like they have algorithms that can predict when a big trade is coming.
Yeah, it's pretty high-tech stuff.
It's like they've got all the weapons, and we're just, trying to fight back with sticks and stones.
It's a good analogy, and it raises some serious questions about fairness. But, not all sophisticated players are using these aggressive tactics. Some of them are just, really good at what they do.
So there are good guys and bad guys, even among the sophisticated players.
I guess you could say that. And look, even though these sophisticated players are, kind of dominating things right now, the DeFi world is still young.
So there's still hope.
Yeah, new tools are coming out all the time. There's talk of regulation that could make things fairer.
Okay, so it's not a lost cause. But it sounds like retail investors really need to step up their game.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to learn. You got to adapt.
And we got to keep pushing for a system that works for everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been eye-opening, to say the least. But we're not done yet. In part 3, we'll talk about the future of DEXs.
The big picture.
Yeah. And we'll explore, what it all means for both the sophisticated players and, the rest of us. Welcome back. It's been a wild ride through the world of DEXs, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
From the nitty-gritty of concentrated liquidity to, like, the existential question of, Can decentralization really work?
Can it really escape centralization? Yeah.
And that's what's been on my mind. After all this talk about sophisticated players, I'm starting to wonder, is true decentralization the kind that actually empowers regular people? Is it even possible?
That's a big question. It's not just about finance.
Yeah.
It's about human nature, power dynamics. Like, no matter what system you build, there's always going to be someone trying to, game the system.
Right. I was thinking about that quote, the one often attributed to Einstein about technology exceeding our humanity.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, are we just building the same old inequalities into these new systems?
That's a scary thought. But I don't think it's inevitable. I think the key is we got to be aware of those tendencies,
Yeah, those human tendencies.
Right. And we got to design systems that anticipate them, that make it harder to game the system. It's a constant process, Technology evolves, our understanding of human behavior evolves.
So it's not about finding the perfect solution. It's about constant improvement.
Adaptation. Yeah, I think that's a better way to look at it.
It reminds me of the early internet,
The promise of democratizing information.
Right. Everyone was so optimistic.
Yeah.
But, well, we've seen how that's played out.
Privacy issues, misinformation, big tech companies controlling everything.
Yeah.
But the internet has also done amazing things.
Of course.
Connected the world, changed the way we live. It's a powerful tool, just like DeFi.
Yeah.
And it can be used for good or bad.
It's up to us to change it.
Oh,
right?
exactly.
I guess the lesson for the internet is technology alone isn't enough.
Nope.
We need education, ethics. We need to talk about, what kind of world we want to build with these tools.
That's where community comes in. The DeFi space is full of people who really care about building a fairer system.
Yeah, I've seen that passion. But passion isn't enough either.
No, you need knowledge. You need to understand the risks, be willing to experiment, make mistakes.
And always be questioning, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Challenge the status quo, demand transparency.
I'm walking away from this with, a mix of hope and healthy skepticism.
Yeah, DeFi is full of potential, but there are definitely challenges.
It's not something we can just ignore.
No way.
We need to be informed, engaged, and, ready to speak up.
This is not a spectator sport.
So, to all our listeners out there, keep learning, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to get involved.
The future of DeFi is being written right now, and your voice matters.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's made you think.
And we hope you'll keep exploring the world of DeFi. It's a fascinating place.